Sam, Texas, welcome to Breakdown.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Serial founder, we were chatting in the green room before I hit record. Serial founder sounds like something I would have as a title if I didn't have this day job. You've been in and out of the WordPress space. We were talking before. A decade ago, you were in WordPress proper. That was like the real, maybe just a couple years away from the real gold rush of WordPress, right? Like people were just like, I need a site. I don't want to use Microsoft SharePoint. I don't want to use Adobe's stuff. I don't want to use these big, heavily licensed CMSs. WordPress, like the fish were jumping into the boat. I ran an agency for a decade. The fish were jumping into the boat. They're like, give me WordPress. Nowadays, not so easy as an agency owner, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. What are you up to these days? I saw this tweet about AI, MCPs, gravity forms. How did you get back into WordPress?
Yeah, so I kind of joined up with an old friend of mine. I worked for his agency or contracted his agency, 10 plus years ago when you were really fighting to get WordPress up and running for big brands and things. And, you go separate ways. A decade later, I'm coming back, and he's got this agency or this company called Trooper Dev, where they do WordPress maintenance. I was sitting in on a client call, and, you get the rundown of the multitude of plugins and how it's all stitched together. And they were really trying to figure out their strategy of how to leverage more with Gravity Forms. And I've been playing with AI and this MCP server stuff for a while now. That's been my bag for the last couple of years. And I thought, let me go look. So I go off and find Gravity Forms website, spin up a trial thing. I'm looking at the documentation going, this is great. I can really knock this out pretty quickly. And within a couple of hours of a little bit of vibe coding, a little bit of background in PHP, I'm able to stitch together this MCP server, connecting it to my Claude AI account. And next thing I know, I'm chatting to Claude, and he's creating these forms in the background. So yeah, I thought, hey, I'm gonna record this, throw it up as a tweet, and just share. And the inbound's been pretty interesting. So
Yeah.
But go ahead.
And at Trooper, they're using Gravity Forms for their customers now, or did you just say, oh, I know how to solve something, let me go get Gravity Forms? Or did they have Gravity Forms in the mix already, and they were just like asking to push it maybe a little bit further?
Well, that's exactly it, right? We were sitting in there trying to figure out, like, their use case was they have a bunch of different types of customers. And each customer needs just a little tweak to each of the Gravity Form. They want to capture this field, not that field. Each one wanted something different, and they didn't want to be clicking around a lot inside of the admin. And I was just sort of thinking, it would be great if I could just chat to Claude or GPT and say, like, I need a form with these fields, that. And sure enough, just from a very basic idea, I was able to sort of try that out. And it doesn't go to production right now, but I think it really illustrates a new way of thinking, because all of a sudden with this interface, we've taken the entire tech team out of the flow, and it's now landed directly with their sales and pre-sales team.
Yeah. And I assume this means that their sales team and probably eventually marketing teams, they can start to just like rapidly deploy these forms for lead gen, maybe direct sales, accepting money right on the site without waiting for the engineering team to, hey, we need another page. Can you build this Gravity Form? Can you tell us when it's ready? GitHub issues, Slack messages. Like, why are we waiting for this? It should be this easy. And you're kind of helping speed up, optimizing that process.
Exactly that, right?
Yeah.
The idea here is, like, Claude, the whole AI thing, it reads, the way the MCP server is built, it has all that documentation. And I saw immediately Gravity Forms had great documentation. It's got a REST API, and you can do all the things that you do sort of through the admin panel. And with some tweaking and iterations, you get to a very usable form very quickly. Now, I guess we'll have to test and see, does that work soup to nuts from the marketer alone to having their delivered endpoint only through this MCP server. But it seems I'm quite confident that it'll get there.
Yeah. I want to talk about how you think AI is going to really change the way folks build WordPress websites, but let's just hold that thought for a moment. One of the biggest challenges that I have as part of the marketing team is letting people know. This is more of a statement, not a direct question, but I loved your feedback, knowing what you know about Gravity Forms now. I was talking to somebody the other day. They're trying to, same thing, the same way I met you. They put out a tweet. I saw the tweet. I was like, hey, let me DM this person and just chat about like what they're working on, because I'm always interested to learn how people are using Gravity Forms. So anyway, he's building this thing, WordPress multi-site. There's a bunch of stuff going on, and he wanted to use Gravity Forms for like this one part of it, which was accepting payments. So we were chatting, and like he started saying he was using all these plugins to do all these other things and to activate users and to register users and to create multi-sites. And I was like, hey, Gravity Forms does all this. Like, it does all of this. You don't need to, like, he was stringing together a bunch of other plugins. And I'm like, we could do all of it right here with Gravity Forms. With the Elite license for like a couple $100 a year, you can have this app that's running. So I'm curious, over your span of starting businesses and working with teams, how do you think, if you could just wave a magic wand and like reposition the tagline for Gravity Forms, maybe in the face of AI, like what would you say Gravity Forms does? Not just contact form, but like, how do you think I should tell people like Gravity Forms does all of this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of had the light bulb when I was going through the docs. I'm like, it is like a soup to nuts process flow. And, I think I would probably beg, borrow, steal a lot from like, HubSpot, who have already spent millions on the marketing and messaging there. But I feel like that it's kind of from the spark of an idea to the delight of a customer. I feel like that's probably where Gravity Forms can play, the spark of an idea to the delight of a customer, because kind of to that point, someone who has gone through the pain of stitching together all these plugins, but the sort of the premium module here, I imagine a world where you have the premium module engaged, you have the MCP server engaged, and then you just talk to Claude, or you talk to the AI, say, this is what I want, this is my process, this is where I need to be human in the loop, and then let Claude kind of figure it out.
Yeah.
And then you get to test and iterate from there, because that's actually what I'm doing already in code when I'm coding in inside of my IDE. But I feel like that's now graduating to non-technical people having an interface like MCP, and I think that's probably a good opportunity.
This is a weird statement to say halfway through 2025 when AI is changing literally like every hour. There's like a new thing that comes out, but I feel like we're all kind of settling in. Like, here's what ChatGPT is really good at. Here's what Google's really good at. Here's what Anthropic's really good at. And then you sort of like, there's that other layer on top for vibe coders, which might be something like Bolt and Replit and Lovable, where you can kind of like start to see the lanes. I haven't found the lane for MCP yet. And I've still scratched my head on its sustainability is the best word. Like it's almost one of these things like everyone has to kind of agree on this standard. And knowing tech companies, I'm just like, somebody's not going to play nice with this idea of MCPs, and it's not going to really work out. Where's the place if somebody's listening to this going, I want to start an MCP service too for my Gravity Forms in my agency, is Anthropic / Claude the place to go to do that? Or can somebody sort of like grassroots build their own MCP service with other tools and technology?
Yeah, great question. That was the actual question I was asking myself as I've started building this stuff. It's like, how do I get started? So you can actually get so here's the magic with that. Gravity Forms has a very well documented REST API. I think, and that you can, with a few different little pieces of glue, you can generate an MCP server just from the documentation of the REST API, which I think is part of the magic. Now, I think that will MCP be the de facto standard? It looks like that's you would be foolish to compete with that concept right now. If you want an MCP server today, go do MCP stuff, because go on GitHub and start searching. That's the protocol that everyone is implementing. Kind of like and so it's fortunate that Anthropic has given away that standard, so everyone is sort of piggybacking onto it.
Yeah, yeah. I built so I've been vibe coding a lot of stuff. Folks listening to the show already know that. But I had built a little website called WPAPIExplorer.com. It's the longest domain I think I've ever registered. WPAPIExplorer.com. And when I got into this, exploring AI, WordPress has REST API. Gravity Forms has their REST API. And I was like, I want to build a tool just to explore, so I can debug my own stuff. It's like a utility app. Like anyone can use it. You can just go punch in a WordPress site and see what API endpoints are available and what data it's returning. But it was like a little utility tool for me to be like, okay, when I'm working on stuff with WordPress and connecting up to other sites, I just want to see what data is available to me. And I vibe coded that. And I think that, and I'm curious in your thoughts, obviously, I think that's the future for WordPress, building business sites, portfolio sites. One might even challenge the blogging concept with WordPress. Is that the future, or is it using WordPress and its open source architecture as this place to store and retrieve data? That's where I see the longevity of WordPress being at. But I'm curious your thoughts. How do you see WordPress surviving in a world where anyone can just go vibe code something on Replit or Bolt for their business site or their blog?
Well, I think WordPress has well over a decade of patterns embedded in the code, embedded in the behavior, embedded in the marketing. And the more that all WordPress-based platform companies, that is the strength, are the patterns that are in there, the user patterns, the flows, the logins. And, we've had more than a decade to make WordPress more secure. So that's not the issue. I think it's more about how do pages get published, right? You can make an MCP server automatically through the REST APIs publish posts ready to go live. So I think that's where WordPress really excels. And I've really come to view the whole WordPress ecosystem as a really good front end to what sources of truth might exist in a CMS somewhere else, like a Prisma or some enterprise CMS. But it's nice to extract that data and have WordPress be the presentation container for that stuff. I see that sometimes with TrooperDev, the company I'm working with. They're working with some very big WordPress multi-site, right? And those parts of those sources of truth live outside the context of WordPress, but they have things like SSO, they have things like other CMS things that are floating into WordPress and then get presented. So that's the future I see. Is WordPress has a good API, it's extensible, and it can really be a great extensible front end to sources of truth out there in the enterprise.
Yeah. I've seen a few headlines recently about, especially in the enterprise and in bigger business, where content is actually really valuable to their business, whether it's, instructional design stuff or research papers. And some of them, at least according to these articles, people are going, whoa, I don't want to give this content to an LLM. I don't want that, ChatGPT bot coming in, scooping up our data and then just presenting it to somebody in a quick query, and then they never come to our website. Not even talking SEO, we're talking about valuable business stuff.
Right, right.
I think WordPress is one of those platforms where it's easy to control that data and very affordable because it is open source.
Yeah.
And I think we might see publishers turn to WordPress because it's, free and open source. Obviously, there's a learning curve if you're not using it and you have to develop for it, depending on your organization. But it's far cheaper than some other commercial CMS. And to toggle this stuff on and off to control that data, I think we might be heading into a world where people are like, yeah, you can't just scrape my data for free anymore. Google did that to us for 20 years.
Yeah.
And, we saw what happened there. And now all these other AI bots are doing into it. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, I want to put my stuff behind some kind of wall or login system. What's your take on like preserving content to the brand?
No, absolutely. I think that people will, I think that the research and academic places kind of had a bit of a solve where there's an abstract that's published and then the rest was behind the paywall. And I feel like that's probably a pattern that we'll see emerge is when I land on a site, there's an abstract of what's behind there. And then I either got to join the site, there's some sort of hoop to jump through to
Right.
get to the rest of the content. And I'm also curious about, I don't know if you've seen this LLMs.text where people are now, they're doing, what do they call it? LLM optimization it's like SEO for LLMs. And so I think there's probably going to be some of this where they're showing when they see that the LLM is scraping their site, they're going to present sort of abstract or summary data that goes in, but the real valuable data will remain behind the gate. It'll be gated.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what, it's weird. I push back against I'm of an age where, when I started my agency way back in 2007, it was like everyone needed a Facebook page, like literally like that was the thing. And you had Facebook saying, everybody's going to have a page, reach your fans. And you probably remember this. It's like, get 1,000 fans on your Facebook page and you can reach 900 of them, and now fast forward wherever we're at now, 15, 20 years later. And it's like, have 1,000 likes on your page and reach 12, right? Unless you advertise, right? And, and there's all this other stuff. And same thing with Google, right? SEO, pay-per-click, metadata, open graph data, like put all your data in the open graph tags for Google to help index. And then suddenly like they're taking all that and showing it at the top of the SERPs. And you're like, what? Now people aren't coming to my site anymore. And now AI, organic traffic falling off a cliff. And then we get to MCP and I'm just like, man, like, don't we do this with APIs? Like, why MCP? I mean, I have an idea of it, but I'd like maybe for you to explore a little bit more. Why is MCP the thing that we're all trending to over APIs? In the sense of like open web and access to data, why do you think MCP will win over just like standard APIs?
It's kind of this. I think it's just a meta. It's another meta, right? And I think in a year we may see something better than MCP, or I think that this is just the current iteration. And there's to be fair, there's a lot of security that's just not handled right now. Like, caveat emptor. This can be dangerous if you just start sticking MCP on the back end of your site. Like, buyer beware. I think we're in this exploratory phase. To really be honest, I don't know where this lands. But what I like, and I think we saw this early on with the Microsoft stuff, like with SOAP and some of these other ones, it was auto discovery of endpoints, right? So I feel like the more things change, the more they stay the same, or history doesn't repeat, it rhymes. And it really is rhyming for me at the moment. Yeah. But I do think that it looks like this may force a bit of standardization towards what REST APIs do and how they present themselves. So that's something I would welcome, is that MCP is maybe a forcing function on adding a bit better metadata or something like that to REST APIs.
So after your sort of 10-year hiatus away from WordPress, how do you want to see WordPress evolve in an AI world? I've been scratching my head going, will plugins exist? Like, will the idea of searching for a plugin, uploading a zip file, hitting install and activate, will that still be a thing, in like 2 years? Or are we just going to be talking to WordPress? Where do you hope to see WordPress evolve in this new era?
That's a good question. I'm just getting familiar again with everything. there's an amazing amount of value, I think, like in the themes, right? In the way that you can brand a site so easily. I think there's a lot of opportunity there for AI to come in and leverage on the back of that, tweaking a theme. I think getting much more into the personalization of what a site can do. I think that, like, here's a free one. I would love to visit a website and it kind of knows who I am or my preference. And then it dynamically can it'll modify the copy on the site to talk to me in my voice.
Yeah.
In a voice that I understand. And I think WordPress has all the hooks to make that happen very easily. It's got the data, it's got the hooks, and it knows. So I think there's probably, to me, it feels like it's a platform that can create a ton of experimentation, simply because the biggest opportunity is that there's so many developers on the platform, and it's so easy to go from a lowly little plugin in the marketplace to a top 10 because it's got the right narrative, it's got the right hooks, it's got the right sort of sell. And I think that's where WordPress excels over everything else that's out there.
Do you think it's a fair trade-off, at least, again, halfway through 2025, to look at WordPress, in the context of vibe coding, right? Because everyone's saying, like, I'm building apps, standalone React apps. I could never do this, right? Like, I understand software,
right.
I understand infrastructure, the internet, and how things should work, front end, database, all this other stuff. But I don't write lines of code. But with vibe coding, I can do it. Replit, well, again, I can build some really cool things. Do you think, and now I look at WordPress as, wow, I guess I could build my own WordPress with Replit or Bolt, but why? When WordPress is already done for me, right? Sure, I can maybe customize it my own way. I see the advantage of WordPress, and especially Gravity Forms, because everyone's saying, oh, you could just create contact form with vibe coding. Yes, you could. A simple contact form, maybe a semi-advanced contact form, but to have all the things that Gravity Forms does done for you, like, I think people are going to start to actually see the value in, hey, WordPress is done, Gravity Forms is done, just give it to me, and I'll just build the rest of the stuff that I need, maybe with AI or whatever.
No, absolutely. I think there's an incredible, I'm not super familiar with all of the Gravity Forms things, but it's an excellent sort of first stop along process flows. And to me, it's a no-brainer that says, the Gravity Forms does this part. Oh, and we need to send it off on Zapier or Make to do some cloudy stuff, and then it comes back. But then all of that is stitched together, either with MCP, stitched together with more layers inside of Gravity Forms. But it's really a no-brainer, and I feel like that because Gravity Forms already does so much, it occupies a big chunk of what the Zapiers and the Make.coms of the world are already struggling to do well.
Yeah. This is just a side tangent, but there are things that I can build in. I use Replit a lot, and that'll be one of my sort of wrapping up questions to see what tools you're using. But I use Replit a lot only because it's just all-in-one database hosting. Obviously, the AI agent, like, everything's there, and I just default to Replit for a lot of the stuff that I build. But it's like I can just start to automate all these things where I don't need to hook into a Zapier or a Make because I really just need like one or two things to chat with each other and pass that data, back and forth, and then notify me at some other end. And these tools, again, they're really empowering people, and it's it's just really interesting to see like where this whole space is going for folks like me. But when you're not at Trooper or not working with a WordPress agency, what else are you doing with AI? What else are you vibe coding, and what other tools are you using to get the job done?
Yeah, I mean, maybe not perfect, but I'm deeply invested in the Python ecosystem. I've been building on Django. Django is kind of like my go-to for a lot of this stuff. But I see a lot of parallels with WordPress as like an application platform. And so, now that I'm working with Trooper, I'm thinking a lot about WordPress as an application platform. And you want to have asynchronous calls. You want to have, parallel tasks. You want to have things that WordPress wasn't initially intended for, but clearly would benefit from. And so things I'm exploring now are WordPress has a great authentication system. How do we can bring SSO in. So now I have functionally an enterprise ready template to deploy on. And now you do something with Gravity Forms, I have data ingestion. I have REST APIs for automated ingestion. And I'm building these little pieces on the side that say, hey, we need a robust email sending function. We need a robust social media publishing function, right? So I can capture OAuth 2 tokens from LinkedIn, from X, from Facebook. And those are the things I'm looking at very seriously as to how can I piggyback onto WordPress to build these enterprise things, and then have the vibe coding just sort of start Monte Carlo iterating on these different things. Just like what's going to work? I don't know, but I can vibe code 5 versions and then sort of cherry pick the best ones.
Yeah. Hold on. Let me just pull up 5, Replit browsers or Claude browsers and start vibe coding 5 different projects. I don't know which forest is burning down while I'm doing that, but I'm getting something done, very productively in the browser right now. I'm glad you brought up auth because user authentication, because I also think that that's a huge win for WordPress, which I don't see a lot of people talking about, because once again you get into, I keep going back to it, like Replit or Supabase, or I forget Amazon's all-encompassing
AMS,
AMS. The hook with these services is the user authentication, right? Because it's like, hey, you're going to build your app, but why would you don't build user authentication from scratch. Why would you? Security, management, email notifications, profile information, all this stuff. And I'm curious if that's the hook for these platforms when the user wants to migrate away and say, you know what, I don't want to use Replit anymore. I want to switch over to AWS or AMS. I wonder how portable the user authentication stuff is, whereas WordPress is open source and it's going to allow you to be a lot more portable. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's just a little thing that was in the back of my head too. I think that might be a strong win for WordPress in the future, for sure, especially for application development.
Yeah, look, it's all fun and games until you have 50,000 monthly active users.
Yeah,
and then you get the bill, right? You get the bill from zero auth. Those are great services, but you got to pay attention. Every time you buy another third-party service, it's going to come crashing down when you hit scale.
Yeah. We've seen this over the last year with competitors to WordPress, like Webflow, where everyone's like, Webflow is great, just move over, it's got everything, and then all of a sudden they get the bill literally for $4,000 or $5,000 for a hosting account. You're like, what the hell happened? Well, the terms say you can only have 10,000 CMS items. What's a CMS item? And it's all of a sudden all these things add up, and you're like, I didn't even know that was a thing. So that's again another advantage to WordPress.
No, look, I agree. It's WordPress fits beautifully into the self-hosting mantra. And now that we're in this post zero interest rate environment where the cost of capital is going up, we're having to look very closely at what is the cost of hosting? What is the cost of running these services at scale? Because it's not like there's another round of funding around the corner to fund it.
Yeah. Right. Sam, Texas, thanks for hanging out today. Where can folks go to say thanks, or if they want to learn a little bit more about what you're up to?
I live and die on the socials, so find me Sam. I think I'm the only Sam Texas on LinkedIn, but if you want, I'm Hey Sam Texas everywhere else.
And are you actually in Texas? I forgot to ask that.
I am. I'm in Austin.
Nice. Fantastic stuff. Everybody else, thanks for hanging out today. Thanks for listening to Breakdown. You can find it every week or every other week at breakdown.gravityforms.com or gravityforms.com/breakdown.
All right.
Boom.